Hello, everyone. Welcome to another installment of Childhood Trauma. Buckle up for some hard hitting stories and enjoy.
What is your childhood memory that you thought was normal but realized it was traumatic later in your life?
Being 16 and finding out that I was the only one of my peers in that class who was still being beaten by their parents regularly. The oldest anyone was the last time they were physically punished was 10 years younger than I was the night before, the last time I was beaten. My friend used to get punched by his dad, but as my friend got older, he got bigger and stronger too. One day he punched his dad back hard and apparently said something like, "Try me." I don't think he was ever punched again. For me, it only got worse in my teenage years. Disagreeing with my dad about anything would invariably result in multiple slaps in the face. It would probably have been worse if my mom didn't jump in between us to stop him. Ah, I understand this. My mother beat me until I was 18. Her response after that was, "You're too old for me to hit now." So instead, she just verbally abused me 100 times worse than before. I moved out ASAP and haven't spoken or seen my family since. This, for me, my mother tried beating me once I had kids. It was near the holidays and the kids were crying. It was late and my mom had to go to work. She began to spank one of the kids, but I reached out to stop her, and then she went for me. My husband had just dropped me off at my mom's house. It was a 3.5 hour trip. I called him as soon as he got back home, and he had to come pick me up. I wrote mom a letter about it. I skipped Christmas that year. We never talked about it, but she never raised a hand to me or my kids again. I feel a little sad because I know for the most part she was a great mother, but she was ignorant of proper ways to handle emotions. She probably needed help as a kid, but got much the same treatment. Thankfully, we, as people, are in an educated time now. I just want to just do a quick pause real quick right here. If you have read this correctly, this is a mother who was being beat by her own mother because she was trying to beat her kids. So this is on a whole nother level. Getting a spanking or beating because she was stopping her from disciplining her kids, in a sense. And that's just really crazy and on another level. Could you imagine that you are a grown up and you have a certain way of raising your own kids, and your parent comes in and says, "I'm going to raise them the way that I raised you," and you say, "No, I don't want that." And then they say, "No, I'm going to punish you the same way." That's really crazy. Just to really wrap my head around the idea of my mother being spanked by my grandmother while she's old. That just doesn't make any sense, and it's mind-boggling to wrap my head around it. I just wanted to focus on that real quick. My dad used to beat me with the belt for all kinds of things. I was 16 when I had decided I'd had enough. I was invited to go to the mall with friends. I was told no. I got upset and slammed the door to my bedroom. Cue the thundering footsteps of my father, with my mom hot on his heels. My dad raised his arm, leather belt clutched in his fist as he yelled about respect. I felt the stinging slap of the belt against my open palm, but I held onto it as he tried to yank it from my grasp. I kept yelling, "No." My mom joined in, pulling my long hair so that my head snapped back painfully. I don't know how I managed to hold on to the belt, but he finally let go and slapped me hard on the side of the head. Stars. I was shoved and fell hard against my dresser. They said I was going down the wrong path. I just glared at them. They left me all alone for a bit. I could hear them talking about me. Later they said things had gotten out of hand. Clearly, I had shown I was too old to be spanked, and by the same token, I should behave like a young lady and not like a lady of the streets, fighting like a man, striking out at my parents, who clearly clearly only wanted what's best for me. Same for me, mate. I can remember him picking me up by my neck and throwing me into a wall for no reason whatsoever. I crawled into bed and didn't move, absolutely terrified all night, just crying. That feeling of absolute hopelessness, that there is no one to confide in, I still live in now. Often have nightmares of that last beating. It's also one of the last memories I have of him. My parents split up a year or so later, but his life took a very, very dark path. Over the next few years, I saw him a handful of times as he struggled with drink, drugs, and anger. My last memory is slowly reversing out of his driveway. He seemed to be getting a hold of his troubles. We waved goodbye to each other. A few months later, I woke up to the news that he had been arrested. Currently, he is serving a long prison sentence for a horrific crime. The shame brought upon me and the rest of my small family is incomprehensible. It had been a few years since, but every day I ask myself, how did I end up with such an animal for a father? I have never discussed this with anybody in person, not even family. I feel like he should have died a long time ago, when at least I can remember him as a good man.
Great story in my family. My grandfather was a notorious Irish drunk. He would beat my grandmother, aunts, uncle and dad when they were kids. When my uncle was about 14, he saw him hit my grandmother and lost it. He grabbed my grandfather by the throat, pinned him against the wall and punched him so hard he nearly broke his hand and told Granddad if he ever touched Grandma again he would bury him. Granddad went quiet after that, never raising a hand to his family again, and many years later he died in his own misery and his own kids only attended the funeral to make sure the bastard was actually gone, not a single tear shed. The last time my, now ex-stepfather beat me, I was 14. I let it happen, showed no signs of pain, and that bothered him. So he called my little sister in, who was 8 or 9 at the time, and started whooping on her in front of me. She started to cry and he snickered when he saw the anger and tears swell in my eyes. I pulled the belt from his hands as he drew back and beat his face blue and black. He never touched me or my sisters again, but I found out 4 years later that he had taken a liking to hitting my mom. This was during a fight they were having. I had been through a lot of parental arguments before that, so I thought nothing of it. Until he called my mum a bitch. Even reading the other comments in the op, I promise no one has ever seen anyone as mad as I was when I heard that.
I ran down the stairs. Hey! I screamed at the top of my lungs. I sounded like Kratos from God of War. And I just let all the anger from all the beatings he'd given me and my sisters all those years, all the anger from the emotional abuse he'd given me. I blacked out, and when I came to, I was being pulled away by the police officers trying to calm me down. Charges against me were all dropped, and I never saw him again. These stories are all connected through violence. It's sad to see the negative effects of abuse, but it's important to read and understand in order to prevent the cycle of violence. Sure, some parents might think that they are right to do what they want with their children, but their child is a human being. There has to be other ways to teach a child other than threats and violence. Parents can blindly think that their way is best, to the point where they forget whatever your age is, and just see you as a child, whether you are 4 or 40. Slapping a child in the face, using a belt, choking them, and other forms of punishment are just too much. Listen to these stories of violence where punishment is truly just abuse. Taking out your anger on your child that you're meant to protect is not right. It just teaches a child to lash out against others, and that's how you get bullies. I hope these stories help you all to spread the message of peace in talking to your own children or to others. There's too much violence in this world already, so why not keep it out of our homes? Thanks.